Hi, everyone. I'm Robert Waggoner, and I'm here as the host of the World of Lucid Dreaming Lucid Dream first week event. Every first week of the year, I'll be here to talk about some aspect of lucid dreaming and also take your questions and share in your lucid dream experiences. So if you want to be on the video recording, just raise your hand like Trey has, and I'll call on you in a second. If you don't want to be on the recording, however, just type something into the chat room, your question, your experience, and I'll get to it here later. So, since Trey has had his hand up for a while, I'm just going to start off by going to Trey. So, Trey, I'm going to ask you to unmute. All right.
Hope all is well, guys. I'm actually calling from Sydney, Australia, and it's 5 a.m. in the morning here. So forgive me, guys, if I'm a little not as loud. It's because my children are asleep.
Yeah.
Um, I called in, dialed in last week. I just wanted to give a very brief update and then ask just two very simple questions. The first is, when I asked last week last month in regards to being kind of stuck. What I tended to do was I kind of shifted and I did the surrendering process, everything that we referred to. And essentially by doing that, what I did as well is two really, really major shifts that really happened that was sensational. The first thing, Mr. Wagner, I just want to thank you as well as the Lucid Dreaming organization here just for doing this. This is just sensational to me. I don't understand why it's like a million people here at the moment. But anyway, so essentially what I did was after doing the surrendering process, I surrendered everything. I allowed my higher self to just say, hey, how I don't know how to do this, but I really want to do it, things of that nature. So what I did was first is I set the intention in my phone every hour to just kind of assess my environment. You know, am I just assessing reality? Am I awake? Am I asleep? What's going on? What's happening? Just very, very brief. It could be like 2 or 3 seconds of just kind of analyzing myself. The next thing I did was what you talked about with the Seth material and just realizing that we so-called create our own reality. And if something happened, it didn't have to be anything strange, but if something happens, to just kind of say, oh, why is this happening to me? I did, every day I would do that. Two major things happened. After doing that, what I did was I listened to your book literally every single day. And what I mean by that is if I'm at the gym, if I'm in my car, just kind of listening in the background, just having that going, just seeing how, you know, listening to it. And then the other thing is I bought the course that you have here with the Lucid Dreaming, World of Lucid Dreaming, which is sensational. I recommend everyone to purchase that as well as Mr. Wagner's book. So what happened is by doing that, I did the wake back to sleep method. What I will wake up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, stay up and do a meditation for about 20 minutes, go back to sleep, and then I would do the counting method as I would sleep. When I did that, everything shifted. I realized two things. I realized that I was not getting enough sleep, meaning that I would probably go to sleep at 10 or 11 when I should probably go to sleep at maybe 9, something like that. Because of the waking process, I got four lucid dreams where I didn't have any beforehand, and then two semi-lucid dreams. So I just want to thank you for that, Mr. Wagner, because it shifted everything. So that's kind of what happened. But my questions that I have is as I was listening to your book, and I would listen to it and just on repeat over and over again, it was two things that really stuck out to me that I wanted to ask you a question about. You talked about ultra frequent lucid dreamers, and some of these people are having like 20, 30,000 lucid dreams a year. So this one lady by the name of Beverly Dorso,
Right.
and when you did that, when you talked about that, I said, "Oh my God!" So that name really popped out. So I went to go research her. I researched, went to her website, and she has a few papers. Not as much as you. You're really amazing online, but a lot of these guys aren't. Anyway, long story short, you did an interview with her on, I believe it was Dream Speak. And this interview is in a three-part. I'll put it in the chat. It's sensational. Could you just talk about when that time frame, when that was, and a little bit about her process and what you learned from her?
Right. So thanks, Trey. And first, congratulations on having these lucid dreams. And I do feel sometimes it does help to kind of surrender. Sometimes we get so into it, we want to have it so bad that we get in our own way and make it more difficult. So sometimes you just gotta. I'm kind of letting go of this, but I'm going to do these other things and see what happens. So congratulations on that. So Beverly D'Urso. Um, she was basically Stephen LaBerge's
Hmm.
number one lucid dream participant for almost all of his research surveys and the studies. And the reason was that she had lucid dreams nightly, and she had been having them nightly since she was a little girl. So in her interview that I did with her, she shared how she was a little kid growing up in Chicago, and every night she'd have basically the same dream that the witches were in the closet, and she just hated the idea that witches were there, and uh, and that would make her become lucidly aware because then she could outrun them or whatever. Finally, she got to the point where she started to negotiate with the witches, and if you don't bug me tonight, then tomorrow, we can do something else. So it's kind of interesting how she became such a great lucid dreamer by virtue of dealing with nightmares, and the nightmares were the witches. Also, what was interesting in this, Beverly went on and got, I think she got a computer science PhD at the University of Illinois in Champaign. And just a really smart person. I've known her for a long time. Uh, but I think in her 30s, she wanted to have a child, and she hadn't been able to have a child. And it was really upsetting for her and her husband that they weren't having a child. And so one night in a lucid dream, uh, she called out for the witches to appear and talk to them about the issue of having a child, and then kind of dealt with her fear or concern about that. And within a month or so, she was pregnant and went on to have a child. So it's interesting sometimes, how people really are just profound lucid dreamers. So she's an ultra frequent lucid dreamer. One time I asked her to count up how many lucid dreams she thought she'd had, and so probably over the course of 40 years, maybe 15,000 a year. Oh yeah, I've had about 68,000. I'm like, what?
Unbelievable.
What are you talking about? So anyway, she's really extraordinary. But yeah,
That's
so
awesome. So, and the last question I have, and I'm just going to be brief. This is very two-part because I was fascinated by her and just her story and everything that you talked about. Do you feel that because I look at these guys as well as you, they're almost like superheroes. I mean, like you said, when the everyday normal people, have to just, figure this thing out, but some people just have it every single night and it's sensational. Do you feel that the average person can get to her level? That's the last part. And then the next piece is after scouring the internet and researching, I've come to this state that yourself, Ed Kellogg, and Beverly D'Urso are kind of like my holy grails in space. Every time you guys are saying stuff, it really resonates with me. Who were the people that resonated with you in your early days, and who do you kind of go to? That's my final. Thank you.
okay. Can the average person do like Beverly does and basically have lucid dreams every night? I think it would take an extraordinary commitment of approaching, lucid dreaming that really, because you meet a lot of these people who had childhood nightmares that were just every night. and then they taught themselves to become lucid. And it's like now they just know, they just sense that, oh yeah, this is a dream. And so the witches might be here. So now I gotta keep my eyes open because the witches might come. So I did run into one ultra frequent lucid dreamer though, who told me she didn't have childhood lucid dreams, but
Mm.
but she had lucid dreams all the time. And I said, okay, what's your story? She says, well, I'm neurotic. That's why I have lucid dreams all the time. And I go, okay, tell me about it. She said that she's had a habit that about 10 times a day she'll ask herself, what was I just doing? And then she'll remember, oh yeah, I was in the laundry room folding laundry, or I was in the kitchen, or I was getting ready for bed, or whatever. And she says that in the dream state, she'll be doing something, and then she'll say, what was I just doing? And then she'll think, I was putting on my pajamas. Oh, this must be a dream. And so, because of this neurotic habit of hers of just 10, 15 times a day asking herself, what was I just doing? And really thinking about it and analyzing her mind, she developed the ability to become lucid, basically nightly and all. So you really have to develop some sort of process like that. In my second book, I call it developing a lucid mindset,
I said,
and so you bet you really got to get into that. Um, I was really lucky that I met people like Ed Kellogg and Beverly D'Urso when I joined the International Association for the Study of Dreams about, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. And it was funny. The first time I had a conversation with Ed Kellogg, he said, "Oh, this is kind of an Annie Oakley moment." And I go, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, anything you can do, I can do better." And he and I were just trying to one up each other on,
Oh, that's
oh, have
awesome.
you ever done this? Oh, have you ever done this? And trying to, but eventually Ed became one of my, he's one of the people that I look up to for not only his lucid dreaming skills, but also his insight into the whole process and what's behind it. So I said Ed and Beverly were, but I do want to tell you, Beverly, uh, everybody has their belief system, and Beverly had her belief system. And, for me, when I begin to interact with the awareness behind the dream, I would kind of wonder how much does it know? How far does it go? And I would really do things that most people would consider psi to see if it could give me an answer that I could verify upon waking. But Beverly was totally opposed to that kind of stuff, just totally opposed to it.
Mm.
But it was interesting though. Years later, I think she let me put this in my second book. Um, One day she went to the doctor, and the doctor says you have an expanded uterus and a large mass. And he goes, I want you to come back in a week, and we're gonna have to look at this because this looks kind of serious. And he'd do another test. And so that week, she decided to have a lucid dream. And in the lucid dream, here's what she did. I would never do this, but this is what she did. The first thing she did is she walked up to random dream figures and asked them, "What do you think about me having an expanded uterus and a mass there too?" And they just looked at her like, "What? I don't know." So that's my first point in telling this story. Don't ask random dream figures. It's like asking
Yes,
random
yes.
people on the street, for, oh, how should I invest my money? I mean, you might get one good answer out of 100, but mostly it's waste. So then she looked up and she asked what I would call the inner awareness. Hey, what does it mean that I have an expanded uterus and a mass? And all of a sudden, she started seeing planes fall out of the sky and crash, fire trucks and ambulances going by, skeletons, like Halloween skeletons appear. And she thought, oh crap, this really looks bad. And so that's how far she got to it. So she woke up and then she went back to sleep, thinking that she had to work on this. She became aware again, and this time she was with her son in the dream, and she realized she was dreaming. And now she saw these geometrical shapes of light way up in the sky. And
Mm.
and her son expressed all this concern about, this weird image. And she goes, "Oh no, don't be worried. They've come here to heal me." And she said, all of a sudden, as soon as she said that, she looked up and they just beamed this light into her body. and she
Mm.
had this kind of ecstatic, you know, kind of feeling that she was being healed. Anyway, the next day or 2 days later, she goes to the doctor. Now she no longer has an expanded uterus, and now she no longer has any mass or anything. And
Mm,
so,
mm, mm.
so,
Fantastic.
but she's one of those people. She's a lovely person, but she's really kind of committed to the science of things, and she would much rather prefer to be on kind of a scientific footing on everything. Whereas some people like Ed and I, we just want to, use this tool to explore.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Robert.
Yeah.
I
Good,
truly appreciate you.
good
Thank
to
you.
see you. Glad to see you. Well, good. Well, I'm gonna share a little bit with you guys, if you don't mind, and here we go. So, I just need to fix things up here. So, one thing that I wanted to talk about was one of my last lucid dreams. So, so I'm bringing up the idea of questions and making decisions and how that might impact your ability to lucid dream. So my last lucid dream started out pretty simple. It was nighttime, and I'm driving a car, and suddenly I come up to an intersection. It's a four-way intersection, and stop. And now I begin to think, which way do I want to go? And suddenly, as I look around, I really don't recognize this place, and I realize, oh, this is a lucid dream. So I became lucidly aware and went on and had a lucid adventure. But what I thought was interesting was oftentimes on a symbolic level, I've noticed intersections when you have to make a decision. Left, sometimes it's left or right. Sometimes it's a T intersection, left or right. Sometimes, it's a multiple, options. Sometimes it's straight ahead, left, right, forward, or possibly backward. But the thing that got to me here was just this sense of questioning, questioning the experience. Which way do I want to go? Was enough to kick me into enough mindfulness that I thought, wait a second, this is a lucid dream. And so I've seen that in other lucid dreams. Like once I was found myself in a big kind of conference hall, and I'm walking across the conference hall to go talk to some people. And then this man in this kind of robe comes up to me and asks me this question: "What is that book you're carrying?" And suddenly I realized I had a book in my hand, and I looked at it, and the title was "Dreams: God's Forgotten Language" by Sanford. And then I thought, wait a second, I own this book, but I never have gotten around to reading it in waking life. And then I thought, wait a second, am I in a dream right now? And I went on and had a nice lucid dream. So again, here is that moment of being questioned in the lucid dream. You know, so here I'm being questioned. And so first it makes you wonder, who are these dream figures who would ask a question? And especially, I always notice whenever you have a dream figure who looks special, who's like wearing a robe, seems to glow from within, or they look special somehow. Oftentimes they're very important. Sometimes their eyes will glow. Sometimes there'll be something about them. But when he asked me that question, that's what led to me becoming lucidly aware. Again, the questioning made me think more deeply about what am I experiencing here. The question was the catalyst that brought me to lucidity. So I'd ask, why do these events lead to lucid dreams? And I think when you have that need to make a decision or the need to answer a question, that requires a moment of mindfulness, of thinking. When you have that need, and oftentimes in that kind of need to answer a question or make a decision, then you become more mindfully aware. Maybe you connect with higher order cognitive processing, as some psychologists might state it, but all of a sudden you can become lucidly aware. So I remember Stephen LaBerge. He stated that in I think his first book that one thing he realized was the need to remember that you wanted to become lucid was behind him making some of his um, lucid dream processes like wake initiated lucid dreams and things. But I think what's going here sometimes too is having an opportunity or having the intent to become more mindful. So here's might be a way that some of you could do this, and you might want to work with my power of suggestion, sleep focus here. But before you go to sleep, just say something like to yourself, "Tonight in my dreams, whenever I need to make a decision, then make me ask, am I dreaming this? And become lucid." Or tonight in my dreams, whenever I need to make a decision, however you want to say it, make me look around and realize I'm dreaming, whatever it is. But I think there's something here that whenever you need to make a decision, then you're in the higher order cognitive processing zone. And that's where a lot of lucid dreams just occur naturally because at that moment you're thinking, wait, how can this be that I'm seeing a dinosaur? Dinosaurs are extinct. Oh, I get it. This is a dream. So whenever I need to make a decision, then make me realize, am I dreaming this? And become lucid. However you want to say something like that. Also, I did want to thank everyone who sent in a lucid dream to our free online magazine, the Lucid Dreaming Experience at luciddreamingmagazine.com. There's some great lucid dreams in there and some really funny ones too. And so if you haven't had a chance to read it, it's all free. Just go to luciddreamingmagazine.com. You can click on this issue that has this cover, and then you can click on past issues as well. If you want to submit a lucid dream or an article about your lucid dreams, then our next submission timeline is May 20th. And so with that, we'll just open it up for questions and we'll take it from there. So I'm going to stop sharing. So Edward has his hand up, and so I'm going to get to him, and then we'll get to some of the other issues in the chat. Okay, Edward, go for
All
it.
right. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
And thank you very much. Well, just one more time, it's great to be here. Um, I just feel what Trey just said, that it's amazing that you are organizing all of this. And I really hugely appreciate it and to have the chance to be here with you all and to see so many people interested in this. Should be more, I believe, but one step at a time. Okay, so I will just keep it brief because there's many people. The first thing I just want to say is that I remember the first time that I was here in this Zoom video sessions, I talked about how having really long dreams was kind of like keeping me off from trying again. But you just mentioned that it's not the first time and not the first person who has this. So there was a huge change because when we talked about it, I just decided, okay, let's go with the flow. I just started writing down in my journal again after, I have to say it, many years. And it's been a common thing now. Every morning, I just wake up and follow the order I have to write down. And just I keep having really long dreams, 3 days, 4 days in a night dream. So I am kind of also getting used to waking up and check up the calendar just to make sure, okay, what day is this? Okay, this is still Monday. It's not Saturday. And I am not kind of like longer scared of it. I just go with the flow, enjoy, and try to write down as much as I can remember. And it's been great because I have had two lucid dreams in the meantime. So I really appreciate it. And I want to say thank you for that because having lucid dreams again, it's amazing. It was totally worth it.
Oh, good.
But now the second thing I wanted, thank you. The second thing that came to my mind is that I was just reading making some research in this specific psychologist. I don't know if I am allowed to mention names or brand things. If there's like a conflict or something. But this particular doctor has published many books. And the thing is this, I don't know if this topic has been touched before, probably is or has been. So if you can maybe give me some guidance regarding to that, I would love to read more about it. It's that they have made some researches regarding hypnosis, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, and so people memories of past lives. So I don't want to get like into the topic of whether if we or we don't have had past lives, but the thing is that through hypnosis they can like access some memories. And I was just wondering, okay, this is something that they can do through hypnosis because they are accessing somehow mm, the like the inner awareness that we have in somehow. So my question would be, is it possible or has it been done just to try to access that kind of memories through lucid dreaming? Because I know that there's a way that we can kind of like access more of like our inner knowledge, like the
Right.
part of our consciousness that we are not completely aware of.
Right.
So I was wondering, maybe there's an interview over there. I don't know it, or there has
Well,
been over talks.
yep. So, this was something that I realized when I was a teenager. On occasion, I would have past life dreams. And I grew up in a family in the middle of America, and my parents never drank alcohol. We never had alcohol in the house and all that kind of stuff. And so imagine this: I'm like 14 years old, and one night I'm looking through the eyes of this guy who's wearing a heavy wool coat, and in his right hand he has a glass of red wine. And so I'm looking through his eyes and I'm looking around and thinking, where is this? And then I get this sense that I'm in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And I start looking around the room and they have gas lights on the side. And so gas lights were kind of used, like around 1900 or so there for 10 or 15 years. And so I started thinking, what is going on here? Then here was the weird thing. Suddenly, the guy brought this glass of red wine up to his lips. And again, I'm looking through his eyes. And as soon as he takes that drink of red wine, it burst in my mouth. It was so exciting that I woke myself up. I was like, whoa, is that what wine tastes like? And I'll tell you, in this life, I probably only drank wine like 3 or 4 times when it burst in my mouth, when it was that good. So I think the guy was a trader uh, in in Rotterdam and all. But just to get to this point without dragging this on forever, um, about I don't know 20 years ago, I decided to spend 9 months and in all my lucid dreams asked to get in touch with past life aspects of myself. And so I wrote this up as a chapter for my first book, but my editor threw it out. And I said, "What? Why did you get rid of that chapter on interacting with past life selves in lucid dreams?" She said, "Well, I was listening to National Public Radio today, and they had a story that only 20% of Americans believe in reincarnation or past lives, and so I'm just going to throw it out. Your book's getting too long, and all." So I said, "Okay." So I still have this chapter on what I did, but here's the concerning thing about it. So um, I want you to think about waking up in lucid dreams, waking up past life selves. So you wake up this one and you wake up that one and you wake up this one and you get to know that one and you start to wake them up. So like here's how this would get to a person. One day I went to my local grocery store, Fairway, and it's a typical 2 o'clock in the afternoon shopping at the store. I'm pushing the cart and I can hear this other stream of consciousness that isn't my stream of consciousness. It's not Robert's. Is one of these past life folks that I've engaged. And so, I'm not too concerned about it. It's over there. It's, just thinking its thoughts and going along. And then all of a sudden I turn my cart and now I'm in front of where the butcher is. with all the steaks and chicken and fish and everything. And I hear this other awareness say, oh my God, they store dead bodies where they have their food. And to him, where all the meat, where the meat market is, was basically a graveyard. It was a, why would you have a graveyard where you have food? And it was horrified. I mean, so that was not a Robert Waggoner thought. Robert Waggoner has been going to that grocery store, for 20 years. So again, that's the only caveat about going deeply into this. I think a lot of us naturally have past life dreams, but sometimes we don't have anything to connect it to. But like I dreamt of I was a woman in the late 1600s, and I saw Gloucester Harbor in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and and I'll tell you, this happened when I was still under the age of 20. And I looked out through her eyes and saw the entrance to the harbor. But I thought, how weird is that? The entrance is to the south. And everyone knows the Atlantic Ocean is to the east when you grow up in the Midwest, like I do. I'd never been to Gloucester and hadn't been to Massachusetts. I get out the atlas in the morning, and oh, Gloucester Harbor does open to the south. But still, I was one of those people. I just never liked the Boston area. And when you're a little kid in Kansas growing up, and there's this town, 1,500 miles away that you just do not want to have anything to do with, this Boston, Gloucester area and all, I couldn't explain it. But finally, about 15 years ago, I went to Gloucester for the first time, and I found the exact spot where this cabin was built that looked out to the entrance to the harbor. And it was right next to where the British soldiers established their first little fort on a beach. And this woman who, quote unquote, I was, she had this heavy white cloth and I couldn't figure it out. And then I thought, oh my God, she sews together sails and does sail repair, and that's how she makes money. But she was a really bitter, sarcastic woman. And I think she was one of those Puritans who was trying to escape, England and get away from kind of religious persecution. But now here she is in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and I think her husband left and didn't return. And so now she was a person without any social status. Was she a widow? Did her husband just leave her for the fun of it and get a woman somewhere or whatever? But when I realized how bitter and sarcastic she was, it made me realize where that element of my own personality came from. And when I saw that, then all of a sudden, that kind of bitter sarcasm in my waking life disappeared. So sometimes I would say that some of these, what we call past life figures, are actually kind of buried within our subconscious. They influence us in subconscious ways, but we just think, oh, that's just a odd trait that I have every now and then. But yes, in lucid dreams, you can engage past life aspects.
Amazing. Well, that was totally amazing and unexpected. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I sure will research more about it, but well, that was it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say though, don't be afraid of it. Trey was mentioning my friend Ed Kellogg. He did something that I wouldn't recommend. So he became lucidly aware. He got interested in this too. He became lucidly aware. And if I'm not mistaken, he asked, now let me meet my most spiritually advanced self, in this lifetime. And he said, suddenly there was this very big black man who he assumed was an African shaman. And the shaman looked at him and Ed looked at the shaman. And then the shaman basically more or less attacked Ed. And he said he spent the entire lucid dream trying to get out of the grips of this shaman who was using all of his powers to kind of, become the victor over Ed. So I would never ask for something like that. My most spiritually advanced self, I don't know. but I do think that at some point we'll realize that all of us are connected to other lives,
Mm.
and it connects in some regards to our personality. And in lucid dreams, you can see this. But the other final thing, just one final thing. Also, you always want to get verifiable information. Like like one time I was looking through the eyes of this guy who was just wearing these incredibly heavy wool blankets. And I thought this is weird, and I realized he is an Asian guy, and so I'm looking at his eye through his eyes. He's seated cross-legged on the floor, and then he picks up this book that was made out of metal. It just had like 3 or 4 pages. They were metal pages, and I could see the hand or the writing of pounded into the metal very clearly. And so I asked inside my Robert mind, what am I seeing here? And my non-visible voice replied, the Heart Sutra. And I thought, whoa, I think that's a Buddhist sutra. And so I wake up. I'd never read the Heart Sutra before. I wake up. It's a very small sutra. It's probably basically 2 pages long. And then I remembered the pounding in the silver metal so clearly that I Google searched, show me Sanskrit, show me Pali. Finally, I came to a language that only existed from traders between India and China from the 3rd century to the 6th century. And finally, I saw some of the symbols that I had seen in this silver metal leaves and all. And I thought, oh my God. So again, you know, you want to be sure that you're not being quote unquote tricked by your imagination. I mean, you really want to investigate these things and see if there's something to it, is my point here.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay.
Well,
Thanks,
I will
Edward.
research for it. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very
Good
much.
enough. So I'm just going to get to a couple of the chat and then we'll get back over to folks. Attila writes, hi, Robert. My mother recently left the physical plane. In your experience, are those okay whom pass? Should we and can we help them in any way? Any other intuition? What comes to you about this topic? So, Attila, in my first book, I have a chapter on interacting with deceased dream figures. So just because you meet a deceased dream figure, they still might be a projection of your mind. Like when my father passed away, that first week or two, I would dream of him being at the TWA gate. And then I realized, and he wouldn't say anything, wouldn't do anything. He kind of just sat there like a potted plant. And then I thought, why do I keep seeing him at TWA? And then I thought, oh, that stands for Trans World Airlines. So, he's moving to the world of the dead. That's why we're at the Trans World Airline gate. And so I think in those cases, it was just me interacting with my grief. And so that he was just a dream figure, a dream symbol, an expression of my grief. Then about 3 months later, I became lucid and I said, oh, I'm going to find dad. And so I announced to the dream figures there that I was going to go find my deceased father. And all the dream figures said, don't do it. It's not time. It's not the right time. And because they were all in agreement and very insistent that I not try to find my father after 3 months of being dead, I thought, they might have a point. Maybe I should let my dad come to me if he wants to come to me. Maybe he's still getting situated or whatever. I don't know. So then I made all the dream figures tell me what each symbol in that lucid dream represented. So like we were by these onion dome buildings, and I go, so what does that onion dome there mean? And what does this mean? And what does that mean? And all. It was really incredible. They just explained everything in that lucid dream experience. So then it was about 3 years later, one night, hadn't been thinking about my dad at all, but one night I see a ladder, and coming down the ladder is my dad. And the first thing I realized, oh, this is a dream because dad's been dead for 3 years. But then I began to laugh because he had such a bad haircut. And I thought he can't even get a good haircut in the after death state. I mean, who can't get a good haircut in the after death state? So then I thought, well, wait a second. Is this my dad as a dream symbol, or is this my dad as a spiritual being who's survived death in a mental framework? And so he comes down and I greet him and I say, "Hey, Dad, you're from the land of the dead. When do you think Mom's going to pass away?" And he said, "Oh, probably, I think he said in 2 to 6 years." I said, "Of what?" He said, "A heart condition." And then I asked him one other question and he answered it. And then he asked me to please be quiet because he came to tell me things. And then he spent the next 10 minutes telling me things. And so, interestingly, about almost exactly 2 years later, my mom went to the hospital and almost died of a heart condition. And then 3 years after that, she went back to the hospital of a heart condition, this time that was caused by prescription drug that the doctor had been having her take. And she almost passed away again, but she made it through that 2 to 6 year period. So anyway, here's what I would say. I think you can help your loved ones. What I would do is during the day or in the waking state, just imagine yourself sending them love. And if you need forgiveness or if you need to forgive them, then from your heart, forgive them. Forgive them for everything. Forgive them for you being dumb and for them being dumb. Forgive them for, whatever. Just begin to forgive. And I really think that's just super important to kind of let go of any of those kind of negative feelings or harmful feelings and all. I think it truly makes a difference. And so I wouldn't be surprised though sometimes you won't meet your mom and all. I did want to tell you one funny story, if you don't mind another story. Um, it was the first week of January of 2022. My mother-in-law appears in a dream, and I immediately start laughing because she looks like she's 40 years old. And it looked like she had sewn the dress that she was wearing. Her name was Nona. And so I immediately became lucid because I thought, Nona's been dead like 15 years now. She's finally come to visit me after 15 years. I thought, what is this about? And so this is what I do in a lucid dream and what I encourage everyone to do. Ask an open-ended question. So I walked up to Nona and I said something like, "Nona, it's so nice to see you. What do you have to say to me?" And she looked at me very seriously and she said, "I want you to understand that September is a very important month." And so I started to laugh and I said, "Oh, if you believe September is important, I'm sure it's important." And she goes, "No, I want you to understand that September is a very important month." And so I thought, oh, there must be something serious here. And so I woke up and wrote this down. Anyway, in the morning, I told my wife, I said, "Look, your mom came last night in the dream state, and she told me this. I think she's telling me that my mom is going to pass away in September. And so we're going to put on the calendar to go visit my mom the last weekend of August." And we went the last weekend of August, saw my mom, spent a bunch of time with her, and the next weekend, in September, she passed away. And so again, the beautiful thing about this was that I got 9 months notice. I had 9 months to kind of wrap my head around this idea of my mom passing away. And so by the time it came, it wasn't for me a horrible shock or anything like that. It was one of those things that this was her time and she's gone and there you go. So again, if you do those things, that would be great. If you're good at lucid dreaming, then I'd encourage you to get my first book and read the chapter on interacting with deceased dream figures. There's some incredible stories, and there's even incredible stories of people interacting with their deceased pets. And oh my God, some of those stories, they're just even more incredible. So Monica asks, who was it with the expanded uterus dream? That was Beverly. No, that was not how she healed her infertility. She says the way that she feels like she healed her infertility was by coming to peace with the witches that had been bugging her ever since she was a child. She came to peace with them in a lucid dream, and then that next week or whatever, she became pregnant, and 9 months later had a child. And so it was probably 20 years later, she had this in physical life. The doctor said she had an expanded uterus and some masses there. And then in a lucid dream, they were healed. So anyway, I'm going to go to Bill, and we'll get some of these hands taken care of. So, Bill, you're up next. Go for it.
Great, thank you. Good to see you, Robert.
Yep, great.
And everybody here, all these dreamers. So I had a lucid dream recently. Over my life, I've had one or two a year. And interestingly, they usually came after I had read first Don Juan, Journey to Ixtlan, and the other books. And then years later, I didn't bother really trying until, maybe about 10 years ago. And I read Stephen LaBerge. I read your book, The Gateway to the Inner Self, and some others, Tenzin Wangyal. And often after reading these, I would have one or two lucid dreams over the next months. Well, after our meeting with you about a month ago, the same venue, the same thing we have going here, I had an interesting lucid dream, and I'm interested in any insights you have about it. And what I find really interesting now is that it's very aligned with the coaching you just gave us about having a question, asking, am I dreaming this? Well, so I'll go through the dream. I'm jogging in an area that I had visited for business once, and I'm being chased by 3 dogs, kind of playfully, but annoyingly. So I cut down a side street, and then suddenly one of them was in my hair and turned into a cat. One of these crazy dreams, and I threw it out of grabbed it off my head. And then I found myself in the yard of somebody's backyard. And there was a voice, obviously not mine, that said, "There's no snakes there." Which I don't have much of a thing about snakes, but my wife really does. She does a lot of gardening. In any case, I then found myself in a room with a woman who I think was my wife, but I couldn't really see. There was just a presence. And next, I was suddenly back outside and saw the woman from a distance. I couldn't tell it was my wife, talking to another woman near a church. And then she walked back in front of me and started walking straight away into what looked like farmland, or an old farm. And I followed her. And as I was following, there was this whitish, perfect white, like off-white circle. Kind of looked like the moon, but it wasn't the moon. And it was physically right in front of me. And as I approached it, I thought, is that going to bump my head? And then it did. And I became lucid at that moment.
Oh, wow.
And that was the question I asked. That was really cool. It was a question, not the same one that you asked, but it was a question. And kind of somehow I was thinking it was the orb that somehow hit the right part of my head that triggers the brain to be lucid, maybe. In any case, as in most every lucid dream I've had in my life so far, it only lasted very short, a few seconds. But the woman started to rise up, and then suddenly she was just a torso and a head, and then suddenly she was just a torso. It transformed into this dark gray metal type thing. Then it opened up and ascended, and that was the end of it.
Wow.
The part that was what I was going to ask you at first coming into the meeting was like about the orb, and did that hit? So, because I know there's parts of the brain that are activated in certain ways that people have found can cause lucidity. But then I realized, no, there was the question too. That was right moments before as well. In any case, I wanted to share that and see if you had anything.
Interesting. So Bill, when you say the lady begins to walk into farmland, was the farmland plowed, or was it full of corn, or what? Did it look like springtime or harvest, or what?
I couldn't tell. It wasn't, I've had a couple lucid dreams where everything's really bright. This one was a little dim at that point, but it looked like it was a field that had been fallow, maybe farmed years ago. And there was some growth, some ground cover, and it was mounded a little bit like you see the rows in a farm. However, I did have a lucid dream several months ago, and it was more like what do you call it, a hypnagogic, where I was kind of falling asleep, and it was just like there was literally like a TV screen, and I saw myself running through this clearly farmed area. But in this one, it wasn't that clear.
Okay. Sometimes in my dream world, and again, everyone's dream symbols are unique to themselves and all. If this was my dream and I followed this woman into a fallow farmland, and it's fallow in the sense that, they're saving it up for the next year and then it's going to grow and have a crop and all. Normally, when I've noticed that in my dreams, it's kind of telling me of an experience of growth is in the offing. So the farmland was selected as, it's been fallow. If you get your head in the right spot, then you'll probably have some amazing experiences. But boy, you might want to Google search what happened next. I don't know. It reminds me of some things in Vedic Hindi stuff that they have a headless deity and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but yeah, that's all really interesting. Oh, wow.
Thanks for that.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing that. Congratulations. Yeah. One final thing that I'd say, sometimes I've noticed that when people start reading books, they get excited, then they have a few lucid dreams, and then once the excitement's kind of over, then the lucid dreams stop. And so sometimes there's certain people who need a certain amount of emotional energy to kind of get them to jump over the lucid dream hurdle and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I really love this white orb. I think that's really a fascinating aspect there.
Now that you said that, Robert, I have the same. I'm pretty much fit the description of that person. I get really focused, and it's exciting and novel and very authentic. And then it kind of arises on its own. It seems it's not something I forced, but I wanted it. And so after a lucid dream that I couldn't become lucid again for a while, I thought, well, let me really start remembering all my dreams. So I've started writing and remembering more than I have. I'm also interested, though, in what you would say is a way to mine that vein of the needing the excitement or the emotional focus that you mentioned.
I'm just going to put it simply. If you can find some way to fall in love with dreaming, not lucid dreaming, just fall in love with dreaming. Fall in love with the creativity, with the questions, with the drama, with the hatred, with the battles, with the whatever. Just fall in love with it. If you can fall in love with it, you'll start to get on the lucid dreaming path. I mean, some of my most incredible dreams have been just what people would call regular dreams, but there's some that have just really given me insight into the nature of my life and all. So that'd be my short answer. Fall in love with dreaming, and the rest will take care of itself.
Beautiful. Thank you, Robert.
Okay. Next, we're going to go to Bruce. Bruce, you're up next. We're going to have you unmute. There you go.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
That was very interesting, Bill. Thanks for sharing that. I was thinking that orb that you bumped into was the assemblage point from Castaneda's Don Juan writing that follows up the right shoulder. I've never seen that, but
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that story. That was amazing. Robert, thanks for sharing all your stories. I just had one quick question on the hands and visualizing the hands and doing the affirmation before going to sleep. Is that something that you typically also like to look at your hands while you're doing the affirmation to reinforce it, or?
Yeah. So the way I did this technique when I first thought about it after reading Journey to Ixtlan by Carlos Castaneda, Don Juan encouraged Carlos that he could find his hands in the dream state and become consciously aware. And I thought, well, what's the technique? I mean, I was a kid in high school at the time. So what I do, I would just sit there and stare at the palms of my hands. My eyes would cross. It would be very boring, but I would just keep telling myself, tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And then on the third night, walking through my high school hallway, boom, my hands popped right in front of my face. And I said, oh, my hands, this is a dream. It was really a special moment. So, yeah, so I looked at my hands. What you don't want to do is, oh, I need to get my nails done, or oh, my hands look, oh, there's another age spot or whatever. Don't do that. Just focus on one thing. My hands are now the symbol to help me realize I'm dreaming. So it might be that, in your dreams, you'll be opening a door and you'll see your hand and you go, wait a second, my hand, this is a dream. Or I was climbing a ladder once and saw my hands and, oh, this is a dream. So it's not always going to pop in front of your face, but sometimes it will.
Also, do you still do it now today?
No, nope, I don't. Normally I use the power of suggestion. I'll just suggest, tonight in my dreams, blah, blah, blah. And I'll just use the power of suggestion. But in many respects, every lucid dream technique has an element of suggestion in it. You look at all of them, and almost every one of them, there's suggestion somewhere in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay, next we're going to Mark. Okay, Mark.
Yes.
Hi there.
I'm here. Hey, great to meet you, all you other dream seekers. It's nice to meet you all as well. First time I've been here for one of these. I'm a Kansan. I'm born and raised here in Kansas.
All right.
Lived all over the country, but I'm back here now, and this is where I live. My question, I'm going to abbreviate for time considerations here, and that will be any advice you might give for those of us. I've only started my journey with lucid dreaming about 2.5 years ago. I have remembered and journaled 10 so far in that 2.5 years, so I think I'm capable. And I'm, however, at a time in my life, age-wise, do you have any advice for people as they age in terms of technique, in terms of what to watch for and do? Because I've never done this before throughout the rest of my entire life. And here I am now wanting to have a quick catch up in the time I have left.
Right. One thing that I think is important for everybody is to have a goal, a lucid dreaming goal that makes their heart sing. That's how Ed Kellogg would put it. Find a goal that makes your heart sing, that if you achieve that in a lucid dream, you'd be so happy you'd float out of your house. And so, because sometimes people, I want to become lucid so I can fly, or I want to become lucid so I can ask a dream figure, what do you represent? I mean, that's all well and good. Nothing wrong with that. But if you have a goal that really means something to you, and also sometimes you have to also imagine, now, how would I achieve that if I became lucidly aware? And so, like, if it was you wanted to meet your mom again, okay, if I became lucid tonight, I would announce, now when I go into that next building, I'll find my deceased mom. And you go into the next building and there's your deceased mom who wants to give you a hug, whatever it is. But if you can find a goal that makes your heart sing and then figure out how a way that you could achieve it, that would be fun. Also, some things that sometimes I think people get too heavy with lucid dreaming. And so sometimes if there's something that you find really creative, like music or something, tonight in my dreams, let me become lucidly aware when I hear celestial music or something like that. If you love music and you got a passion for music, and all of a sudden, that night you'll find yourself, and then you start hearing this interesting music, and where's it all coming from, and you become lucidly aware. If you can kind of marry your creative interest along with the lucid dreaming, so makes your heart sing, fills you with a sense of creativity. That's what I do.
Nothing really age related, though.
Not really. now one thing I was going to say for Bill, I think in my second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, with my co-author Caroline McCready, um, I do encourage everyone, when you become lucidly aware, especially if you're not doing it frequently, first thing you want to stay calm. So if you get too excited, you're going to pop out. So almost anything that you mentally vocalize, like stay calm, you'll immediately become calmer. Or if you're looking at somebody exciting, just look down at the floor, something boring, remind yourself to stay calm. Then you might want to enhance your awareness by rubbing your dream hands together. And even though, they're dream hands, you'll still feel the kinesthetic sense of your hands rubbing together. Or you can touch a nearby lamp or a nearby wall. Just kind of ground yourself in that space. Make that space seem more actual, more real, a place you can really hang out in. So first you've calmed down, you made the space more real. Then you want to maintain your focus. Every 30 seconds or so, just remind yourself, this is a dream, I'm dreaming this, or that's a dream house, there's a dream figure, here comes a dream cat, there goes a dream car. And as long as you're calling everything a dream, then you're maintaining that awareness that, oh yeah, I'm in a lucid dream. And if you get to that point, then you can go, well, wait a second, what did I want to do? Oh, I wanted to interact with my deceased mom. Okay, when I go into that next house, I'm going to find my deceased mom and go in and see what happens. So,
Thank you.
But again, yeah, good to hear it. And glad you live in Kansas. I'll tell you a funny one that happened to me, Mark. I really love Kansas. I grew up in Kansas, and so I was out there kind of on the prairie. And one time I had a lucid dream, and all my lucid dreaming friends were in my living room in this dream house. And the living room had a giant picture window that the curtains were drawn. And I announced to all my lucid dreaming friends, I said, look, I'm going to show you my true home. And I pulled back the curtain, and darned if we weren't looking at the grasslands of Mongolia. And I was so gobsmacked. I was like, I've never been to Mongolia in this life. I hope to get there someday. But when I saw that my true home was Mongolia, I thought, oh my God. But then I've had some other lucid dreams that bring in Mongolian symbolism, from thousands of years ago and stuff. It's really strange, but I do love the prairie. And so when I saw those grasslands, at least in this life, I ended up in Kansas, which is kind of the American version of Mongolia, at least the grassland part.
Thank you so much, and I'll reserve any of my other questions or observations till another time.
Okay, good enough. Monica asked, did the chapter I write on past life, is that available anywhere? It'd be cool to read. I'm planning someday to come out with a third book to talk about some of the wild stuff that's happened since my other two books, and I'll put it in there when I do, but I haven't had the chance to write that yet. So thanks, Monica. So V asked, are there any practices that can be done during the day to increase lucidity and sleep as I struggle with critical questioning as I am dreaming despite stating the intention before sleep? So Trey was mentioning our previous talk. In my second book, I have a technique I call developing a lucid mindset. And so I'm a person who's read a lot of the books of Jane Roberts and her books. One of the messages that together with our inner self, we create our own personal experience, our own personal reality. And so here's what I began to do to develop a lucid mindset. About 6-7 times a day, whenever anything unusual happened, I'd ask myself, what beliefs, emotions, ideas do I have that brought that strange experience into my life? And so the strange experience might be some little kid on the sidewalk gives me a big smile. And I would stop and I'd say, what beliefs, emotions, thoughts, ideas do I have that brought that into my life? Or I might see a taxi driver getting yelled at by somebody, and I'd go, what beliefs, ideas, emotions, thoughts do I have that would bring that into my life? And what began to happen is I would do that in the dream state. I would see, a famous actress walk down the street, and I'd stop and I'd think, what beliefs, emotions, ideas do I have that would bring that famous actress to my neighborhood? And then I think, famous actress in my neighborhood? Are you kidding? This is a lucid dream. Wake up. And so I'd become lucidly aware. I got to the point where I began to have 30 lucid dreams a month doing this technique. But again, every day when anything strange happened, I'd stop. Why am I experiencing this? What beliefs, emotions, ideas do I have that's drawing this into my experience? And so then whenever anything weird happened in the dream state, I would immediately just ask that. It was just part of my mental toolbox. And almost always I'd become lucidly aware. So again, that's a practice you can do. It's in my second book. It's called Developing a Lucid Mindset. And, and then of course there's other practices that you can read about, the wake back to bed technique of Laberge and all that kind of stuff. Okay, Heather writes, she had 2 visitation dreams, one with her ex and one with her soul puppy. Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. Let's go. Okay, further on down here. Oh, thank you guys for putting that in there. It's interesting. Heather wrote about being visited in a lucid dream or becoming lucid, I think, when she saw her ex, who apparently had passed. I think here in May, I'll be doing a 30-day course with the IONS, IONS group. They're out of California. And I'll tell you a funny story from a couple years ago. So I'm doing the 30-day program, and about week 2 or 3, people come to understand that in a lucid dream, you can interact with a non-visible awareness with what I feel is your inner self. And so this one woman, she was really a good lucid dreamer, but she had never even heard of this idea. So this is what she did. She becomes lucidly aware. She remembers that she wants to interact with the awareness behind the dream and have it help her with the problem she has in waking life. So she looks up and she shouts out, "Hey, inner self, how do I deal with my ex-husband? He's a real a-hole." Because she was really pissed off at this guy. And she hears this non-visible voice say, "You should reconcile with him." And that really pissed her off. And she said, "Reconcile? Are you crazy? He's really an a-hole. He did this and this and this to me. Why should I reconcile?" And then it said, "He will be the only one there to take care of you in the final year of your life." And all of a sudden, she said in the lucid dream, she could see herself in a hospital bed, and there was her ex-husband, tending to her needs. And this really upset her because she really doesn't like her ex. And so she shouted out, "How do I know that this just isn't some crazy imagination thing? How do I know that any of this is true?" And then she said, all of a sudden, in response, an image appears of, I think it was a silver SUV that had crashed into a ditch. And she, in the lucid dream, she's thinking, what kind of response is that? She asked, how do I know that any of this is true? Or I think she might have said, "Show me something that'll happen that'll confirm that any of this is true." Anyway, so she sees this silver SUV crashed in the ditch. She wakes up, writes down the lucid dream, can't believe it, never going to reconcile with her husband because he's a number one a-hole. Anyway, she turns on the TV and Tiger Woods has crashed his SUV in Southern California. And she said it was the exact image that she saw in her lucid dream. She said she was just totally, completely blown away. So again, I think that's when you realize that this inner self is another layer of the self. It doesn't tell you off all the time what you want to know or what you expect or what you believe to be the case. Sometimes it'll avoid all those assumptions and give you something just totally surprising, totally outside the box. And so I think in that particular case, that's a wonderful example of that. But again, I don't know if she's ever going to reconcile with her husband. You just never know. So anyway, yeah, the IONS group is in May. I think it starts like around May 17th or something like that. And that's It's the Institute of Noetic Sciences. It's in the San Francisco area and all. So thanks for asking about that, Trey. Anyway, everyone, I think we've gone on for a little over an hour here. Normally I try to keep these to an hour, but it's great to see you all here. And, if you have any questions or anything, I think I have my website. I'm not super great about getting to, well, anyway, if you go to lucidadvice.com, you can see what I'm up to and what I'm thinking about. And if you ever want to submit a lucid dream, please go to our magazine, Lucid Dreaming Magazine. One reason I helped co-edit and create this Lucid Dreaming magazine was to hear from other lucid dreamers about the crazy stuff that they're doing, because I found it inspiring. Sometimes I'd read the lucid dreaming experience before I went to sleep. I'd read some lucid dream and I think, oh, that's impossible. That person's, you just can't do that. And then what would happen that night, I would become lucidly aware, doing the same thing that the person did and able to see that, yeah, indeed, you could do it. So I use that as kind of a way to keep my emotional energy and interest up and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, want to thank everyone for coming, and I'll be back next week. It'll be sometime, probably Wednesday or Thursday of May. So I'll talk to you in May of 25. Thanks much. Adios.